Hello everybody, Alvaro Cortez Jr. aka Lance Danger here, and today I'm going to do something that I hope you all find interesting. And it's essentially kind of giving you a sneak peek into the method behind the madness of how I kind of come up with elements in a story and for characters as well. And I thought a good example of that would be El Gran Matatan from Silver Island Studios, a character that I created for them, and I didn't think it was going to be popular. To be honest, that goes to show that as a creator, you can only do so much. You can just do the best that you can and hope that it'll resonate with an audience. And luckily, the short stories that I did for Silver Island Studios did just that from what I heard. So I'm very thankful for that. So, to talk about El Gran Matatan, I would have to talk about Blindside, which is where the character originated from. Back in around 2010, 2011 ish, the creator of Silver Island Studios and the character Alpha, Jose Cruz, approached me to write various short stories if I was interested in doing it. He wanted to expand the universe of his studio and his characters and have other characters be around his flagship character Alpha. So he wanted to aside from the main story, which was Alpha, which I think issue number 1 had just come out back then. He wanted to do an anthology series with the lesser known characters or the lesser characters that would eventually interact with Alpha, and that's how Paths was born. Originally, I was only going to. Originally, my stories weren't going to be in issue 1. Both of the stories that I had written, at least the initial first 2 stories, were going to be issue number 2, but due to time restrictions and other creators that fell out of the project, actually Blindside got bumped up to issue number 1. So that was kind of like a lucky stroke for myself as a creator, I guess, that one of the stories I wrote actually ended up being in a number 1 issue. So that was kind of cool. So when Jose approached me to write Paths, by then, of course, I had been doing The Mighty Warlord, which is pretty much the gateway into other freelance projects. The same thing pretty much happened with Project New Wave with Manuel Carmona. By that time, I had helped him with some dialogue for issue number 1 of Project New Wave, which at that point had come out in Spanish. And we were planning to do it in English because around that time was when we decided to strike out on our own and create Truthful Comics. And around that time, Jose Cruz asked me if I was interested in writing a few short stories with his characters. And I was a bit nervous because up to that point, Manuel was the person that I was most interactive with, that I've collaborated with the most in terms of writing stuff for. So this was definitely a big challenge, and especially because it was going to be completely in Spanish, despite the title being in English, which is, I guess, done more to attract the average reader in Puerto Rico. But the stories themselves are in Spanish, and I said sure. I jumped at the chance eventually to say yes because, again, it was a big challenge for me as a writer to actually write a full script in Spanish, and it was a lot of fun, to be honest. And it was definitely challenging because after I accepted, I was under the impression that we were going to co-write it. He was going to give me some kind of plot and I would help him with the dialogue, so maybe it wasn't going to be a full script after all, since he said to help him with the script. But after I accepted, and he was very grateful that I did, He tells me like the power set of the character. He tells me that it's a character that lived in New York but has gone to Puerto Rico for the first time for story purposes, of course, because she's eventually going to meet up with the character Alpha, which is based in Puerto Rico. So after he like gives me those two things, like the power set and that backstory that she's moving from New York to Puerto Rico, there was nothing else. Like he just basically said, that's her power sets, that's her backstory. Write whatever you want. You have a blank slate, you have a blank page for whatever story you want to do with that information. And I was like, swell. I was like, okay. So I had to kind of like take it in parts. So I was like, okay, I have to basically introduce this character. She has not appeared before in the comic in this universe yet. I have to show off her powers, and it has to make sense in like 9 pages or whatever it was. Yes, I think it was 9 pages, the short. And it was challenging because, it was like a double-edged sword in a way, because on one hand, my cat again. On one hand, I didn't have like that safety net of falling to reading about how her character is or other creators' interpretations to kind of know like how she would react to one thing or how she would react to another. What would she say in this kind of situation? Like there's no backstory at all there. But on the other hand, I'm not tied down by continuity either. So it was pretty much like how he said, it was going to be a clean slate, a blank page for me, so to speak, to write this character. And I'm the type of writer that when I'm going to present a character for the first time, I like to make it as clear as possible. I want to make it very clear to the reader what this person's like, what their power set is, kind of more or less what their motivation might be, at least in that short amount of story that there is, because I would like the reader to have like that jump on point to be introduced to this character. So when I was like analyzing what he told me, like university girl, lived in New York, Puerto Rican family, New Rican, moves to Puerto Rico. So first thing that came to mind is that she's going to talk in Spanglish, which is literally a mashup of English and Spanish, because a lot of New Yorkers, stereotypically speak that way, especially so having gotten kind of that chunk out of the way of how to give her a little bit of personality, then came how to explain her power set. And her power set, as described to me, was that she can accumulate energy from noise and vibrations. So, and she has also heightened senses since she is blind, hence the name Blindsight. She is blind, so she has heightened senses, and her powers are based around any noise, any vibration. She kind of stores up that energy and shoots them out in like plasma blasts back out. So the more powerful the noise, the more powerful the vibration, the more powerful the blast will be when she shoots it back out. And now in the current series that she's in, apparently she regains her sight for that brief moment where she actually uses her powers. But back then, like, she didn't originally have that specific trait. So of course that wasn't in the original stories that I had written. But again, like, I had to like come up with a way to present her powers in a way that's unique to this character and didn't sound too derivative of other characters that might have like the same kind of power set and whatnot. And even though there's nothing original out there anymore, like everything is kind of like a derivative of a derivative of a derivative, um, I didn't want to reinvent the wheel and put that pressure on myself of being like, oh, I have to be original. But I did want to like give it its own unique spin in the sense that even though elements might have been seen before, I wanted those elements to kind of make sense within the context of this character in particular and her world in particular, if that makes sense. So I needed to come up with a way that her powers could be explained, that it could be informative and entertaining to the reader, and at the same time give her a unique voice as well. So I decided to like do it into two separate ways in that story. Like the first half of the story is kind of like her power works in the day-to-day slice of life, kind of like what would happen like in her everyday life. So of course she comes to Puerto Rico and she goes to visit El Paseo de la Princesa, which is located in the capital of Puerto Rico, San Juan. It is a very touristy area, a lot of people. So I thought at the time that would definitely help complement her power set. Like for example, her sense of sound, like she could hear the pigeons being fed popcorn and stuff like that and smell the ingredients. She could hear cruise ships that are approaching the ports that are all around San Juan, since it's a beach area. She can hear all the little mechanics and gadgets and the motors and whatnot and the propellers and the cruise ship. The ice cream vendors, she can smell all the ingredients that's in the ice cream, and she can hear all the little comments that people may make around her as well. So I wanted to kind of establish that in her like everyday life aspect, to like kind of show the people, the reader, like how her powers work within like a real world, yes, chill situation. So the second half of the story, of course, is where I wanted to show the dramatic action side of it, and that's where it was a little bit more difficult and what challenged me the most, to be honest, because I needed a situation that was dramatic, entertaining, had levels of action where she could legitimately get hurt, like a legitimate threat. So what my thoughts were like, okay, she can shoot back plasma energy that she's stored up from absorbing loud noises and strong vibrations. So I was kind of stuck on that aspect for a little bit until I thought to myself, well, guns are definitely a quick way to like show her using that sound and that vibration, and to an extent using her senses of, as well as like kind of like again also hearing like the small mechanics of how a gun, like the coils, the lever, the all those little machinery inside the gun works, springs and whatnot. Like she'll be able to hear and smell all that as well, like smell gunpowder and whatnot. But I was thinking to myself, like, having just like one random person with a gun isn't that threatening, at least not visually to me. And if it's not that threatening to me visually, I thought it wasn't going to be that threatening to the reader either, because I wanted people to like care and worry about her being in this dilemma. So I thought maybe a machine gun. But then I thought, like, again, one person with a machine gun isn't that menacing. What about a gang with machine guns? And I thought that could maybe work, but at the same time, it would probably take too much time to have her take out a gang with machine guns because I only had like that limited amount of pages to write this story. So then I started like thinking crazy out of the box and started thinking, okay, what if it's one person with a machine gun, except that the machine gun is a part of his arm? And that's where I started brainstorming in that aspect. And I thought to myself, okay, what if it's not like a machine gun, but it's more like a Gatling gun, like those old machine guns, like from the 30s and 40s and whatnot, that it just goes like round and round and round, and bullets fly out per second. That would be visually appealing, I think, for a reader, and would definitely present a threat to her. And that's how the motif of El Gran Matatan was born. The name El Gran Matatan, I really put it as a placeholder because I just wanted to create a threat for her. I didn't think it was going to be a character that would gain popularity on his own later on. So El Gran Matatan was more of like a placeholder name in case Jose wanted to come up with a better name, or if I came up with a different name afterwards. And for those who don't know, the lingo, Spanish, especially like Puerto Rican folklore, Matatan is kind of like a street guy, a street guy badass, like someone that you wouldn't want to mess with in the streets. It's kind of like saying thug or something like that is the closest thing, I guess, to that, like the great thug, El Gran Matatan. That's the closest definition, I guess, the closest comparison I can make. So I sent the script to Jose, and thankfully he loved it. I was very nervous I always get nervous when I send scripts freelance because I don't know how they're going to react. Thankfully he loved it, and he was incredibly interested in Matatan. Like he replied to me asking like, hey, this character, Gran Matatan, what does he look like? I really like the sound of this character. And I was really honest with him. I said, like, I have no idea. It's just a character I created to be a threat for Blindsand, to help kind of develop her powers so that the readers could, understand what her powers are. So he asked me if I can come up with a design for it. And I essentially just say back to him, because again, like, since I wanted a credible threat to her and I wanted to have something visually interesting for the sake of the reader as well, I just replied to them. And just because I had like that art guide next to me at the moment, I still have it somewhere around here. It's a Super Street Fighter 2 art guide introducing the new challengers. I've had that art guide since Super Street Fighter 2 came out way back when. Revealing my age almost here. But anyway, I just happened to have the page open on the character DJ's character guide, and I just kind of looked at it, and then I looked at the email and I wrote to him like, okay, the character DJ from Super Street Fighter 2? Well, make him more Caribbean looking, more Puerto Rican, Dominican looking, and just put the Gatling gun on his arm, and there you have it, Gran Matatan. Of course, like, don't copy him outright, put like that Puerto Rican Caribbean flair on him. And that's what he ended up doing. This is how Matatan ended up looking in the first issue of Paths. And I have to say, the artist that did this, let me look up his name real quick. Let's see. Brouwen LeFleur did an amazing job illustrating this story. The colors were by Esther Salguero, and those were excellent colors, as well as you can see from the story here. Like that, it was a really great art team that did this, and I was so excited when I saw my script come to life with this art team. If I had the resources, I would probably hire this art team myself to take over Warlord or something. Who knows? But anyway, as I said, like again, it presents more of an exciting visual motif for the character, and it shows off her power set as well. And again, like I created Matatan to be like the polar opposite almost of Blindside, because I really wanted a character to really help flesh her out and help her stand out, compared to any other character out there, even including my own characters. So thankfully I was very successful at it, I think. The comic book shops that sold it sold out. Actually, they sold out issue number 2 as well, which had a different story I wrote for a different character as well. And Matatan ended up being doing cameos in other comics, and eventually had an issue number 1 as well, a one-shot. Well, not really a one-shot, because now there's an issue number 2 that's going to eventually come out as well. But Matatan eventually like got his own following, which is pretty cool. As a creator, that's the best thing you can hope for. To do the best that you can within your limitations, and then it's up to the reader to decide if it's something that's going to succeed on its merits or not. So seeing that these issues sold out, and seeing that not only Matatan became a popular character, but Blindside has kind of like taken over as that flagship character at Silver Island Studios. She has her own successful series now, pretty much based on the story that came out from past number 1. And Matatan has made various cameos and has his own standalone comics as well. Again, you can't ask for anything more as a creator. So I'm very thankful and grateful to all the people that bought and read these comics. I got some very nice messages from people approaching me that said that they loved the comic, and because of these comics they started reading my web comics as well. So it also helped to be a gateway to get into my own creations too, which again, as a creator, that's the best you can ask for to discover a new audience and hopefully entertain them as well. So that's the story of how El Gran Matatan came to be. That's pretty much how Blindside and Matatan both kind of spun off into their own little things. I'm grateful that I was able to be there in the beginning and was able to contribute to that popularity to some extent. And that's the method behind my madness. As you can see, like, I can be a little over analytical to an extent when I think about how to introduce a character or how to present this character in a way that will make the reader care and feel for this character, and not want to see the character actually get hurt, and present an element of drama and danger into the story to make hopefully the reader be entertained and want to read more afterwards, after the story is finished. Anyway, that's going to be all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time. And so I'm going to give me 1 sec, guys. Hey boy, what are you up to? You want a snack? It's treat time for my cats. Hey everyone, Lance Danger here, and I wanted to... Hey everyone, Alvaro Cortez Jr., aka Lance... Oh, I can't talk today. Hello everyone, Alvaro Cortez Jr., aka Lance Danger here, and today I want to show a little bit of the method behind my madness. In other words, I'm going to talk about how the character from Silver Island Studios, El Gran Matatan, came to be. You just saw that, right? My cat is sabotaging my video right now, guys. Editor-in-Chief Hunter Jr. is looking for a demotion.